What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the podcast. And we have such a good episode for you today because we're talking about 4 things that you absolutely need this year to find freedom from food obsession once and for all in 2025. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show where you'll learn how to heal your relationship with food and your body so that you can focus your time and energy on more important things like your personal growth. I'm your host, Sabrina Magna, food freedom coach, and my mission is to help make your life happier and healthier without stress, overwhelm, or guilt about food. If you love the show, please do go out and share it. And if you're looking for support with your relationship with food, details about my programs are in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump in. All right. So first of all, thank you so much for joining me again today and pressing play. If you are here and you are listening to this podcast, I'm so grateful for you. And that tells me that you're someone who wants to experience something different in your relationship with food this year. You want to finally put a stop to this never-ending cycle of feeling like you're living on these extremes. You're either on the wagon and really quote-unquote good and respecting the rules, or you're completely off the rails and eating everything in sight. And it feels like your entire life is just living in fear of gaining the weight back, living in fear of losing control, living in fear of falling off the wagon, or what if I eat this? And there's just so much anxiety that can get wrapped up into our relationship with food, and it robs us from our ability to live our lives fully. So really, this episode is for you. If you look back on maybe the past few years, even decades, and you feel like you've done everything under the sun. You've tracked your calories. You've done Weight Watchers. You've done keto. You've avoided carbs. You've avoided trigger foods. You've respected the food rules. And you're always jumping from one thing to another because every time that you try to ease up on food, right? So maybe you were really strictly on a diet or obsessing over everything that you put into your mouth. And it almost started to feel like food was a full-time job for you, and you eased up a little bit. Maybe it was after a stressful day at work and you were like, I just can't have this strict control tonight. Or you went on vacation. Or we're in January right now, so it's the holidays and you want to just relax and enjoy food and not be so obsessive about your diet or your plan. But every time that you want to ease up, it's like this switch goes off in your mind and you can't just have a few things here and there and then stop eating. You don't really know the word balance or moderation. It's like this switch goes off in your mind and then it's all in, right? You're going to eat everything in sight. You don't trust yourself. You can't control yourself. And so it's really like this pendulum, and you pull this pendulum back to one side, and that's the restriction, the food rules, the dieting. And then when you decide to let go, you don't just politely, slowly, demurely, you don't just fall back to the middle. You swing all the way to the other side. And so maybe you've started to think that there's something wrong with you, like you need to diet and obsess and restrict in order to eat quote unquote healthy, in order to maintain your weight or whatever that might be for you. You've developed this belief that you can't just eat without the rules and without this obsession around food. So if you're at this point in your life, I just want to start off by saying that I get it. That is exactly how I used to feel. I was always living in these two extremes that in my mind, the thought of not dieting or not restricting went hand in hand with quote unquote letting myself go, or gaining the weight back, or feeling out of control, and then feeling even worse, feeling worse physically, feeling uncomfortable, feeling bad in my body, feeling worse mentally because you're just binge eating all the time and you feel like crap, right? So I get it that when you start learning about intuitive eating or food freedom or having a healthy relationship with food, there can be a lot of fear, and there can be a lot of misconceptions around what that means because all you've ever known is like those two extremes. So the reason why we're having a conversation around this is, well, there's a few reasons. Number one, we're beginning of January, and this is the time where you're going to be exposed to so many diet apps, so many diet ads. Diet culture is so loud right now because it loves to take advantage of the fact that they know that the holidays are really tough for people. They take advantage of the fact that January has this like new year, new me energy. You want to get quote unquote back on track. And they just try to pull you back into this system that doesn't work, that isn't sustainable, that is only going to throw you back into this cycle of restricting, obsessing, feeling like you're missing out on life until eventually you can't do it anymore. You fall off the wagon, you binge, you feel like crap, you blame yourself, you feel guilty and ashamed. And then instead of recognizing that, hey, maybe it's the dieting, the restricting, the surface level solutions that don't work, it's not me the problem. Well, we end up blaming ourselves instead. And we think, okay, maybe it wasn't the right diet, or maybe I just wasn't disciplined enough. I need to be more motivated, more willpower. And chances are you've done this before. This isn't the first year that you've experienced this. It's probably not your first rodeo. And if that framework, if that system was meant to work, wouldn't it have worked by now, right? Wouldn't you have healed your food issues by now? If it was simply a matter of willpower, let me tell you something, and I really want you to grasp this. I have worked with some really incredibly smart, self-aware, disciplined, successful women who were doctors, nurses, lawyers, therapists, things that require a lot of discipline, things that require a lot of willpower. So the thing is that when it comes to food, it's not about willpower because you do have a lot of it. But willpower is a temporary resource. It's a band-aid. And just like you can't wear a band-aid forever, you can't rely on willpower forever. I like using this analogy of if you have weeds growing on your lawn and you want to get rid of them. Well, you have two options. Number one, which is the easier and quicker option, is to go over it with a lawnmower. But as you know, the roots are still going to be there. So you're going to have to go over it again in a week because they're going to grow back. And then if you keep just going on your lawnmower, you're going to have to do it every week. And it's just going to keep growing back until you decide to say, you know what, this might take a little bit more effort. It might take a bit more time, but I'm going to rip out the roots and I'm going to do it once and I'm going to do it well so that I don't have to keep doing this every single week. And that's really the same thing that happens in your relationship with food. Every time that you do like the diet or the surface level band-aid solution, it creates this like temporary sense of control. And then once you can't do it anymore, because most of the time it's not sustainable, it's not enjoyable, you feel like crap, you might feel hungry all the time, you might be thinking about food all the time. Well, eventually all of that deprivation that you've been building up and all of those thoughts about food that have been consuming you, they create so much pressure, so much tension around food that it completely opens the floodgates and it's like, okay, gotta eat as much as I can now because who knows when's the next time that I'm going to be able to have these foods. So really my intention and my hope is that I can give you some really important things to keep in mind and to understand about what it really takes to break free from food obsession, what it really takes to be able to trust yourself around food and to make food a non-issue. For food to be something that you think about maybe 5% of the day when it's actually time to eat, and you eat, you move on, and you're able to leave food on your plate, and you're able to crave the salads and the stir fries or the Buddha bowls or whatever that might be that you see as like those nourishing foods that give your body nutrients, while also being able to eat the desserts and the cake without feeling like you're going to lose control. I think of just last night, I was at a friend's get together and it was a potluck and we had a whole bunch of different foods. There was a huge turkey and stuffing and egg roll and pasta salad, like all of these fixings. And I made myself one plate, and it was actually a decently small plate because I didn't know how hungry I was going to be. And I also wanted to try a little bit of everything before I would go back for seconds to decide like what I really wanted to eat more of. So I made my first plate, I eat it all. And what I realized is, I'm full. Like I don't need more food now. And in the past, when there was so much urgency and scarcity around food, I would just tell myself, well, this is the only time that I can have this stuffing or this pasta salad. So I need to get my bang for my buck. I need to go back for seconds, even if my body's telling me like, hey, we're good, we're satisfied. And so for me last night, it was so easy for me to just not go back for seconds because I knew that I can have this food literally whenever I want. I can go to the store and buy pasta salad. I can make myself stuffing or turkey or egg rolls, whatever it might be. And when dessert came around, I had made these like really delicious peanut butter squares. That is my mom's famous recipe that is always a huge hit at parties. So I made those. And then there was also all these different types of cookies there. And I was looking at the dessert spread and it brought me back to how I used to feel, which was, oh my God, the desserts are out, like a mix of anxiety and excitement. You like want to try everything and then you end up eating everything and way too much of it and you feel like crap after. And this time around, I had maybe like 1/4 of a peanut butter square that I had made. And I had like 1/3 of a cookie that I really wanted to try. And that was it. I was good. And I just asked one of my friends, I said, hey, can I bring a cookie home? Because I really want to try it, but I'm too full tonight. And he was like, yeah, of course, bring one home. So now I have some cookies here to try at home. And I walked away feeling physically really great, mentally really happy because I was present. I was there to enjoy time with my friends, to have conversations, to make memories. And food was there. It was really enjoyable. It was actually one of the best meals I've had in a really long time, but it wasn't like the main event. It wasn't the central focus. And this is possible for you too. And so what I really want to talk about today is inspired by a conversation that I had with a woman who booked a call with me before the holidays. And she was really at this point in her life where she realized that she doesn't want to keep dieting and feeling obsessed with food for the rest of her life. She had been doing it for years, I think even decades. And it was impacting every aspect of her life because when it came to her kids and her career and her social life and wanting to travel, it was always this black cloud looming over her head of what am I going to eat? Am I going to fall off plan? This fear, this anxiety, this guilt. And I know what that feels like. And when I was talking to her, I realized that there's like this visual that came up in my mind. And I want to share this visual with you because I really hope that it helps. So I want you to think about where you are right now as you standing on the edge of a cliff. So you see yourself feeling like food consumes you, feeling like you can't eat the things that you love without feeling guilty, thinking there's something wrong with you, being afraid of losing control, right? That's might be where you are right now. At least that's where I was. That's where most of the women who work with me are. And then there's this other cliff on the other side in front of you, and there's a body of water between where you want to be and where you are right now. And where you want to be is where food is a non-issue, where it's easy, where it's peaceful. You listen to your body, you eat when you're hungry, you stop when you're full. There isn't this constant angel and devil on your shoulder fighting, eat this, don't eat that, like this constant tug of war in your mind, where you are able to eat mindfully, enjoy your food, eat foods that you love, crave foods that nourish your body, and where there's no drama and mental turmoil. Food is just food, and it is something that makes your life better. It makes it happy, but it's not this like central focus. Living your life is the central focus. So if that's where you want to be, then think of that as like a cliff in front of you, and there's this body of water between where you are and where you want to be. And what happens is that most people want to get there, right? Like I don't know many people who are like, I love being obsessed with food. I love dieting. I love feeling guilty and ashamed around eating and not trusting myself around food. I don't know many people who are there. So you are where you are, and to try to get to this food freedom, well, what most people think is that you just kind of leap, you stop dieting, you stop restricting, you stop the food rules, and you're going to get to the other side. But actually what happens is that you leap and you fall. You fall into the water, and think of this falling as losing control, overeating, binge eating, feeling really chaotic, really impulsive around food, only wanting to eat cookies and brownies and pizzas, all those foods that you've been restricting. And so you fall into this feeling of chaos and loss of control and loss of trust around food. So then you tell yourself, you assume that that just means that you can never get to the other side. You can never get to that point where you're just normal around food. But really what's happening is that you're missing the bridge. There is a bridge that gets you from where you are right now. So food obsession, loss of control, dieting, to where you want to be. And until you develop the pillars that build up this bridge, until you have the tools and you develop the skills and you establish the mindsets that you need to have in order to get from where you are to where you want to be, which is food freedom, food peace, then you're going to continue to feel like every time you try to stop dieting, every time you try to stop restricting, you just swing to the other extreme. And there are 4 main pillars that you need in order to build that bridge. And once you have those pillars in place, once you've actually identified the reasons why you keep falling off the wagon or feeling out of control, overeating and binging with food, until you've identified what's going on underneath the surface and you pair it with the right strategies to fix those root causes, then we're going to keep repeating the same cycle. So what I really want you to know is that if you're really scared right now because you don't want to repeat 2025 in the same way that 2024 and 2023 and 22 and 21 went, where food was way too important for you, but you're afraid of how it's going to look for you to stop restricting or obsessing, or you have no idea how to even get there, there is a way. And that's the reason why I developed the fuel method, which is my 4-pillar framework, because I realized that people were missing those 4 ingredients. So they were trying to jump into this void without having the bridge to get them where they needed to go, setting up the foundation of a healthy and sustainable relationship with food, because that's what you need. You need a stable foundation. You cannot build a house on quicksand. And what most of you are doing is you're trying to build a house on quicksand and it keeps falling apart because there isn't that strong foundation. So I want to talk about what those 4 ingredients are. And this is actually the basis of my Food Freedom Academy 2.0 program. That's why I'm creating it. I'm going to be teaching it to a small group of women in just a few weeks so that I think it's going to be over 16 weeks, you're going to be working with me and I'm going to teach you how to implement and cultivate those 4 pillars and set up that foundation of a healthy and sustainable relationship with food so that you don't have to rely on self-control or willpower or discipline or dieting or tracking or food rules. None of that is going to be necessary. It's all going to be innate and natural. And I know that if you've never experienced that before, it might feel like, Sabrina, I don't think that's even possible for me. And I get it. I used to feel that way too. And if that's the case, it's simply because no one has taught you yet. And I want you to really hold on to that word yet. I just don't know yet, but I can find out. I can learn. Because remember this, every single human being is born as an intuitive eater. When you were a little baby, you weren't tracking the calories and how much breast milk you were drinking, right? Your body was telling you when you're hungry, and when you were full, you would turn away, you would push your plate away and you'd be like, I'm good. I don't need any more. But at some point in your life, your brain got consumed with good and bad foods. Do this, don't do that. Portions, eat this much, don't eat that. So many rules that confused you with what your body was actually telling you. So this year, if you really want to free yourself from food obsession so that you can have your time, your energy, your mental space back, and so that you can eat without guilt or shame or constant fear of losing control, these are the 4 pillars that you absolutely need to implement and master. And these are like the 4 pillars that make up that bridge to get you from where you are to where you want to be, which is food freedom. So those 4 pillars are, number 1, you need to master body connection. You need to learn how to listen and trust your body's signals. And I know that you've heard that before, right? Like people say all the time, just listen to your body. But the thing is that most people don't tell you how. There's a huge difference between knowledge and applied knowledge. And when you have applied knowledge, we don't just talk about what you need to do, but we talk about how you need to do it. So in Food Freedom Academy 2.0, I'm really going to take my clients, my members in there through the specific step-by-step of how do you become an expert on your body. And at first, it's going to be more high level. It's going to be about understanding your hunger cues, what they feel like when they come up, what they're trying to signal to you, respecting those cues. Same thing with your fullness cues. But then we're going to go even deeper into the nuances of different signals from your body. Like I am at a point where I know if my body is needing protein, if it's needing carbs, if it's needing sugar or vegetables. Like I have this really deep, intimate connection with my body and open communication, which makes it super easy for me to feed my body and know what it needs in that moment. So that's the first piece, is you really need to learn how to become an expert on your own body. You're going to continue to feel like you are a slave to rules and external means of control, like tracking or measuring or weighing your food. So that's really that first pillar that builds up that bridge. The second one is the ability to regulate your emotions, to cope and heal emotional wounds without turning to food. Because what most people learn over the years is I'm going to use food so that I don't have to feel what I'm feeling right now. The anxiety or the stress or the fear or the loneliness or boredom. So we develop this automatic ingrained pattern that whenever we feel this uncomfortable emotion, we turn to food. And most people never address why. They never address the underlying issues that are causing this pattern. And so those surface level solutions, they never heal it in the long run. And I always use this example of, imagine that you have a toilet that starts overflowing, and instead of fixing it, of addressing it right away, you're like, you know what? I don't want to look at it right now. So I'm just going to close the door and pretend that it's not there. Well, after a few hours, it's going to create so much more of a mess, right? Like it's going to actually create a disaster in your bathroom. And same goes for those things that we don't look at, those emotions, those past memories, whatever it might be that we aren't addressing. They build up over time, and then they start to impact you on a daily basis subconsciously. And so you just know that you're feeling anxious. You know that you're not feeling well emotionally, but you don't know why. All you know is that food at least makes you feel better temporarily. So you eat, and you try to eat to fill the void, but because it's an emotional void, it never feels like it's enough. So then you end up overeating, and then the emotions come back. And on top of that, you're feeling the additional guilt and shame from overeating. So the second pillar is to really learn what's going on when you're turning to food to eat emotionally, and what you actually need to do to be able to regulate and heal your emotions so that you don't even feel the urge to turn to food. I used to be a huge emotional eater. Every night after 8 p.m., when the busyness has worn off and I'm in silence and I'm sitting with myself and those emotions start to come up, I would just turn to food and I would just eat until I went to bed so that I didn't have to feel anything. And I thought, I'm never going to be able to fix this. Like, I'm never going to be able to break this pattern. And now food is the last thing on my mind when I'm feeling any kind of strong emotions. I have built this entire toolbox of strategies that I turn to in order to actually regulate myself, to make me feel better, to address my emotional needs in a way that's going to be long-term and good for my mind, good for my body, instead of just numbing or distracting myself temporarily. So that's really that second pillar, to build that bridge from where you are to where you want to be. And as we're talking about this, I hope that it's helping you start to have clarity about why things haven't been working for you and what's actually missing in order for you to get to that point where you're on the other side, where food is that non-issue. Because again, it is 100% possible for you. So the third pillar that's part of this bridge is learning how to have an unrestricted mind. When your mind is filled with negative, anxious thoughts around food, or this happens often if you have done multiple different diets over the years, what happens is that they all have their different set of rules. So one will say no carbs, one will say no eggs, one will say low calorie, low fat, high protein, like all of these different rules. And even if you don't do the diet anymore, the rules get like ingrained in your subconscious mind. So everything, every thought is consumed with guilt and shame and confusion and overwhelm. And on top of that, there's a lot of negative thoughts towards yourself. I'm a failure. I'm never going to be able to fix this. I'm always going to struggle with food. What's the point? I've already ruined this. Might as well start again tomorrow, right? A lot of all or nothing thinkers that I work with. And all of those cognitive patterns can contribute to you losing control. Because if you feel like you've ruined your day, if you feel like you've done something wrong, if you feel like this is your only time that you can eat this food, or you're guilty for doing it, then you're going to eat as much as you can, as fast as you can. You might eat it in secret because you feel like you're doing something wrong. And then you tell yourself the infamous, I'll start again tomorrow. So we really need to do a whole rewiring of the way that you think about food, the way that you think about yourself, your body, exercise. And when you have a healthy mind around all of these different areas, then what you're going to notice is that the guilt-induced, shame-induced overeating, this like feeling of loss of control and lack of self-trust, it actually goes away. Like I was saying before, eating for me is not consumed with all of this drama or this mental turmoil. When I was having a cookie yesterday, I didn't think I was doing something wrong, which actually led me to be able to have a third of the cookie and then just bring a cookie home. So that's that third pillar. And then finally, the last pillar that builds up this bridge between where you are and where you want to be is lifestyle consistency. So we talked about all or nothing thinkers before, right? Thinking that you're either not doing anything or you're doing all of the things. Either I'm completely off plan or I'm eating vegetables 3 times a day, 2 fruits, counting my portions, like not going out to the restaurant or social events. And of course, that doesn't lead to a lifestyle that you can maintain, that feels good for you, and that is designed for you. One of the biggest problems I see, especially on social media, is that because we don't know how to listen to ourselves, we don't know how to trust our intuition and create our own path, we look outside. We look at what other people are doing. Okay, this one is working out in this way. She's eating in this way. She's journaling. She's meditating. So that's what I should be doing. But if you're not creating a lifestyle that works for you, that you want to do, and that is like your energetic signature, then it's going to be really hard, nearly impossible to maintain in the long term. So I love working on this pillar with my clients so much because I have learned so much about behavioral psychology and what it really takes to change your habits, to change at all, and how to create a lasting lifestyle that you can maintain that feels the best physically, mentally, and emotionally. So that's really that last piece, is asking yourself, do I know what it really takes to change my behaviors in the long term for it to stick permanently? Or do I have a very all or nothing mindset when it comes to this? Do I think, for example, during the holidays, do I think, okay, well, I can only get back on track on January 1st or on the Monday of when we come back from break? It really is this like on, off switch, instead of knowing how to progressively add small things to your life that in the long term are going to compound into these massive changes to your physical, mental, and emotional health. So for example, I have a lifestyle I love so much. There's a lot of joyful movement in it. There's a lot of habits that contribute to my mental health: journaling, meditating, going for walks, taking baths, talking to friends, talking to Luke, making time for my social life. Like, of course, when it comes to food, I've developed a way of eating that just feels really good for me. I get to nourish my body. I eat in a way that feels good. And I also eat the foods that I love. But this didn't happen overnight. It really was this progressive addition of all of these small little things, which is why I'm now at a point where I don't have to think about it. It's not hard if let's say go on vacation. It's not hard for me to come back and get right back into it because I love what I'm doing. It doesn't feel like a chore. I actually want to do it. And this comes back to the notion of self-love, right? Doing all of this because you know that you are worth it and that you deserve it. You deserve to feel good. Think of the people in your life who you love the most. You would do anything for them to smile and to feel good. But why aren't you doing that for yourself? So really, those are the 4 pillars that if you haven't mastered them, if you've never been taught how to truly become an expert on your own body and trust yourself, how to regulate your emotions and stop relying on food to numb them, how to unrestrict your mind and rewire your thought patterns, and how to have a consistent lifestyle that you love. If you've never learned those 4 pillars, then of course there is a lot of fear around letting go of obsession or of restricting and micromanaging everything, because think of it this way. It's as if you've never learned how to swim. So I think of my niece who she swims with a life jacket. She's actually doing swimming lessons now. So that's probably not a good example. I'll use my nephew who's younger. So he's never never taken swimming lessons. So when he goes in the pool, he has a life jacket and we're all around him, making sure that he's okay. Now imagine that we never taught him how to swim, took off his life jacket and threw him into the deep end. That is a horrifying thought to have, but he of course would drown, right? And that doesn't mean that he can never learn how to swim. It just means that he hasn't learned how to swim yet. So I want you to think about it in the same way. You have been dependent on this life jacket of dieting and restricting and food rules and external measures of quote unquote control. And really it's just a false sense of control. And then you try to jump into the deep end, but you never learned how to swim. You never learned the foundations of a healthy and sustainable relationship with food. So you drown and then you go back to the life jacket because you think, I cannot be in the pool without a life jacket. It's not possible, but it is. You just need to learn how to swim. And that's really what Food Freedom Academy 2.0 is there to do. I'm going to teach you how to metaphorically swim. Really, I'm so excited and so passionate about this new program because I want to give you literally the step by step for each of these pillars, everything that you need to know and to implement to integrate into your life so that you easily have the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. And you just get to walk across that bridge. It's not scary. It's not alone, right? Because you're going to be surrounded by support. I'm going to be there by your side, especially if you're coming in as a founding member. Oh my goodness, it's going to be so fun because we're going to be doing this together. And I'm really going to be there holding your hand so that you don't have to guess. You don't have to try to figure it out by yourself. You don't have to listen to 12 different podcasts and follow 100 different people on Instagram to try to piece it all together. It's all going to be laid out there for you. And you are going to learn how to master all 4 of these pillars so that you get to a point where food is a non-issue. And that is really what you need in order to free yourself from food obsession for good in 2025. So the program, Food Freedom Academy, is opening its doors in a few short weeks. So if you want to be the first notified when the doors open, because spots will sell out super fast. I only have 30 spots available that I'm taking on as founding members, and I've got more than 15,000 people in my community total. So if you want to be the first notified when doors open, then you want to get your bum on that priority wait list. Those people are going to get an email first to let you know that doors are open before I open it up to anyone else if I do end up having to open it up to other people. So you can go to sabrinamagna.com/FFA-waitlist, and that link is also in the show notes. So if you want to go there, you can put in your name and email and you will get first priority to know when the doors are open. It's going to happen at the end of this month, January 2025. I don't know the exact date yet, which is the only reason why I can't give it to you. But when it does open up, you will be the first to know. So get yourself on the priority wait list. I guess the last thing I want to leave you with is that this can be a time where you can actually take advantage of this renewal energy, right? I know that I feel it when there's a new year and there's this sense of a new beginning. You get to decide the tone for this year. You get to decide what you want to do, what you want to focus on, and how you want to live your life this year. And so this is really a time where you can take yourself out to December 31st, 2025. And when you look back on the year, what would you need to do this year in order to feel so incredibly proud of yourself? What would that look like? If you could 12 months from now see, oh my God, this was this year that I finally ended my struggles with food, that I finally learned how to have a healthy relationship with food, free up my brain space, and truly live a life that I'm in love with. What would that feel like? So take advantage of that renewal energy. Take advantage of the new beginning and be super intentional about the kind of life that you want to create this year, because I want to tell you that whatever you desire, it is possible. You just have to set your mind to it and take the actions necessary, get whatever support you need in order to make it happen. Thank you so much for listening. I love you, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magnan Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.